John, I was thinking about you a little bit earlier this morning when I was getting ready for this and some other things. When I go on LinkedIn and other social media and I look at profiles, oftentimes I'm met with an academy of words as to what a person does, such that you have to read through numerous paragraphs to try to get a feeling of what someone does. Or it's the exact opposite, where it might be just a 1 or 2 word deal where the person says mortgage agent, real estate agent, mortgage broker, which, yes, tells me what they do, but it's devoid of vision, devoid of what their real business is, what makes them different from what others do in the same profession. When people ask you, John, what it is that you do, how do you typically respond to them?
So I do 3 things right now, right? I run a recruiting firm called King Global Enterprise Solutions.
Yes.
I also run a firm called Strategic Engagement Consulting, which is a consulting firm for governments, state, local, federal. And now, I don't know if the right word, how do you say manifesting or putting things into place, but we are working on strategic engagement consulting with Help Our Heroes. If you watch some of my most LinkedIn posts from the beginning of the year, I've been talking about a veteran wellness initiative, suicide awareness program for the state of Missouri and Kansas. So now I'm like a nonprofit person, right? Right? So
yes.
my for-profit will be doing management, right? It's going to be doing project management, program management for the state as the state puts this program together. But I also have a non-profit aspect, and we've partnered up to put this legislation in place. What the deal is, the legislation is going in place. We just need support from folks from everywhere to either donate, provide resources, whatever they can, as we build this coalition, starting in Missouri and Kansas, and then we branch on to other states throughout the union. The vision is to take this legislation at the state level and then send it to Washington, D.C. at the Capitol level and turn it into a national law.
Yes, I see. You have an amazing array, absolutely amazing array of skill sets and experience. When I read your profile, how did you manage to learn so much and experience so much? Because you're still a relatively young guy.
Yeah. 28 years 25 plus years in the Marine Corps, and another 3.5 plus being a federal contractor. As a logistician, when I was on active duty, I just kind of prided myself with being in everyone's business. Well, I was never myopic and I was never tunnel vision. For me to support a general field operation, let's just say a company or a battalion's going to the field, I need to know what everyone's doing so I can support you, right? You know what I mean? If
yes.
I can't just be myopic and only think about what the S4 is about to do. Yes, I need to worry about my trucks and the food and all of that, but I also need to know what comm is doing. I need to know the operation side. I need to know, the other supporting elements going to the field on what they need, because at the end of the day, the logistician is responsible for that, regardless of who's in charge and regardless of what the mission and the operation is going to be. At the end of the day, humans need to eat. They need to sleep. They need to have some type of security. They need movement. They need weapons. They need helmets. They need flak. They need all of those things just to do their exercise or to deploy or whatever it is. So I prided myself. I was a Renaissance man, as they like to say in the logistics world. You knew a little bit of you knew a lot of everything, but you weren't proficient in just one thing, right? So that's probably where that experience comes from. And that's probably why I can't settle down and I'm doing 3 things instead of just one, like just doing recruiting or just doing federal contracting or not running a non-for-profit for veteran suicide awareness.
So in addition to the consulting, the headhunting, and the nonprofit, so the nonprofit was the third leg of the tripod then, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I was very excited, and there was a personal aspect which touches me at a deeper level that gave me which excited me in terms of speaking with you today. And I'll tell you what it is, because I went through a personal experience, and I wish I had someone like you at my side when I went through this. When I returned from Iraq in 2009, I took a post in Fort Dix, New Jersey, as the officer in charge of a Navy unit there, a small Navy unit. And during the time, and it was a very good life, I was probably close to 50 years old. I'm 58 now. And just 58. And I began to wonder what comes next. And I'm sure that there are tens of thousands of other veterans who have, as the time approached, that they came to think about what comes after the military. What do I do next? So while I was still on active service, I began visiting veteran job fairs nearby, and I went to many of them. And I thought it would be much easier. My experience was this: I would go to one after another, and I would see the same message everywhere I went. We love vets.
Yeah.
However, I found out, and maybe it was my own naivete or my own serious consequence of my own mistakes, innocent mistakes, where it seemed like a lot of that was basically smoke.
Yes, as a recruiter, as a guy who got out, retired in 2020, I had the same mentality in 2020. Mm-hmm. Starting a recruiting firm in 2022, kind of half part-time, starting it. And then in 2023, like going full time, doing recruiting. And it is a lot of glad handing and shaking right now. It's nothing against your experience, and it's nothing against per se that the job, but the falsity comes from veterans, and especially senior veterans. I was a retired officer. We get in our own head and we think, well, we can go out and do this pharmaceutical thing, but we know nothing about pharmaceutical. There's a job probably in CVS for us as a project manager, project lead, right? It's doing logistics or doing operations or something like that. But we're not going to run a full pharmaceutical program just yet, right? We have to start somewhere. And so a little bit of that is humbling ourselves, right? Just know, like, 06, 05, 07, all the way down ranks to E7 or E6, even retiring. You have a base, right? You get a retirement base, and you probably, if you've done 20 to between 15, if you're put out medically at 15 or you've done 20 plus, you're going to have your disability base and you're going to have your retirement base. Now, how much gap do you need to fill in? Maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's 30,000, maybe it's 40,000, right? But there's a gap to bring you right back up to active duty. And that's what a lot of us forget is, like, what is it that you need to get right back up to active duty? Then you start looking, right? When I got out in 2020, my get out of bed money, I wasn't getting out of my house for less than $65,000. Right? Because it was it was just going to cost me more to leave my house than to find a job to supplement, right? So as I go to virtual events, hiring fairs, wherever, I counsel a lot of veterans in my spare time. Not spare time, just it's part of my normal weekly thing, right? I have a block of time from 1:30 to 3 o'clock where I'll allow veterans a 30-minute window to have a transitional conversation. And you're like, why do you use lunchtime? Well, because during that time I'm driving to pick up my kids from school, and then it's kind of uninterrupted from at least 1:30 to about 2:40. I can give a veteran their full time. 2:40 to 3. So this was a different story because I got, two young kids, 12 and 6 in there arguing the whole time. So, but 1:30 to about 12:40, I'm good to give you undivided attention because I'm sitting in my truck waiting to pick up kids. You know what I'm saying? So I go to local events here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I'll speak to vets. I'll speak to their families. And, like example, I have a friend. His name's Billy Tingle. He chased after Wells Fargo for almost 4 years to try to get in there. He never got in, and he knew the veteran people, and he knew all these people who never got in. There were many days I would tell him, bro, just go somewhere else. Like, what veterans need to go with is go to where you're valued. As a recruiter, You know how many no's I get? I get plenty of no's. As a federal contractor, you know how many no's I get? I get plenty of no's. You go where you're valued. You go where somebody understands that your capabilities. Now, as a recruiter, I'll tell you, the government hires over 22% of veterans work in the government. The Bureau of Labor and the Bureau of Labor Statistics didn't like break it down like which government, federal, state, or local, but 22% of all veterans, employed are working for the government. And then it goes down to management consulting and kind of IT. So, and then it goes down to transportation, logistics, and then there's one more, distribution or something like that, right? But you got to think about it. We are institutionalized, and for you to break out and go to something that's non-institutionalized takes a kind of a whole revamp, right? So we are more comfortable in government and institutionalized things, education, banking, large, big companies, the Walmarts, the Targets, you know what I mean? That's
absolutely.
Or models that are similar to that, right? Like there is a local business that supports a local Target. You can go to them because you understand logistics, or you can go to them because you know how to establish IT base for the linkages, right? So no fault of your own. You just didn't have the right people around you, right? So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. And you mentioned you kind of touched indirectly upon something in the entire cacophony of noise, and especially coming from someone not knowing necessarily what to do. If I were to rewind, how would I be able to find a John King that would be able to correctly direct me? I tried different veteran organizations and they were helpful, but they weren't professional.
Yeah, your VSOs, the local and state, via the VFW, American Legion and local VSO should have connected resources. So what we're doing in Missouri and Kansas is actually we're going to make those states connect those resources.
Yes.
Right? We're going to have, just for example, the Guard, we're going to have 6 regional Guard locations across Missouri for right now, and then I have to work with my partner on how we're going to break up Kansas, right? Probably the same 4 or 5. The population of Kansas is a little smaller than Missouri, so about 4 or 5 regional locations in the Kansas area, and each one of those Guard locations acts as a hub for resources for mental health, right? And then because the state has control of the Guard, they can pour money into there, they can hire folks, and then each one of those Guards will have a regional location to reach back, right? You're in a small rural county, but the largest city is, maybe 40 minutes from you. Okay, well then the Guard unit there reaches out to you for resources, right? So not every state's going to have this just yet, but your local VFW, your American Legions, your veteran service organizations, like state-approved veteran service organizations, and your Department of Veteran Affairs for the state should have resources. Also, for example, like North Carolina's Department of Chamber of Commerce works hand in hand with the Department of Veteran Affairs, and they have an exclusive hiring thing for veterans and their family members. You go to the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce website for hiring. It shows a link to help veterans and their families, have access to jobs within the state, right? You know what I mean? Or access to resources. Now, I'm not going to say every state's not like that, but the vision is to ensure states have those mechanisms in place to be able to take care of their veteran populations, right? So it's what vets don't know, what they don't know, right? Now, the New York, New Jersey area, very, very pro-veteran, or at least the New York, New Jersey, like city is NYC are very veteran pro. I'm not too keen on what happens upstate New York, but I know within the Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York region of the world, they're very pro military, and a lot of defense contracting, especially in Philly, a lot of, federal contracting between Jersey and New York City. So, you know what I mean? Like it's just and I don't want to say this publicly for their transitional resource service organizations that are paid by the local bases to take care of folks, but they only give you a piece of the pie, right? They only give you portions of that puzzle for transitional services. You do have to do some outreach to other things. So a thing that we were saying a few years ago on LinkedIn was, own your transition, right? Well, that's kind of biased, like, because who have transitioned on are saying, I did it, you can do it. Well, you can take them by their hand and help them along the way, right? Not just give them the blanket statement, own your transition. I've said it a few years ago, I was saying it, but not everyone understands what that means, right? A staff and CO, senior staff and COs and officers, we should have a network, and we do normally, and our network probably is in the government or at other institutionalized places where you can reach out to a friend, maybe get a few referrals and potentially get a job, right? Like you kind of have that. Well, the E5s and below, or the junior officers that get out that don't have those large networks, what are they doing? Right? Who are they reaching out to? Who's helping them navigate through some of those challenges as they transition out of the service? You know what I mean?
John, I distinctly remember one. I think it was during the summertime, still when I was up in New Jersey. At that time I was taking a leave. I believe I was doing a deployment in Djibouti, Africa.
Okay.
And so I came over for 2 weeks. Took my daughter I went with my daughter and my wife to the New Jersey shore, and they were doing things that they like. I'm not a water park person. It's just not me. So as I was sitting and waiting for them, they were in the water park. I was talking with a gentleman. Turned out he was a Vietnam vet, big guy, disabled vet. And I was telling him some of what I was telling you too, about the difficulty in finding a job, although I was still on active service at the time.
Right.
And he told me something which felt as if the blindfold had been ripped off my eyes. Like a blind man trying to hit a piñata. All of a sudden, the blindfold was ripped from my eyes. And I'm sharing it with you because since you're actually in this career, in this business, you can give me your opinion whether you think what he said was true or not. And he said, when you're sitting in an interview in front of a potential employer, and they know that you have served, and if they have not served, there's a certain level of discomfort that they will not communicate to you, and that will count. It will count against you, although they won't tell you that.
It is 100% true. I'll let you finish your thought. Yeah, I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll give you some background into a company that I experienced that with.
Right. And he said that if they're also a veteran, also served, that counts more in your favor, and most especially if they were in the same service. And I told him that I believe after I told him a story about how I went to interview for a managerial position out west,
right,
where the interviewer was playing with his cell phone during the interview. And again, it could have been maybe I wasn't giving him the correct answers. Maybe I wasn't necessarily saying what he wanted to hear. Nevertheless, what he said kind of woke me up in a way, but I wasn't sure, 100% sure, because I didn't have my feet in this business.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we open with the open statement, there's a lot of glad handing, there's a lot of shaking, but how are you actually supporting your veterans? And sometimes they're just gathering resources. I'll give you an example. Mid last year, me and a business partner did a recruiting thing for a restaurant in Florida. I will not give their name out, but it was a restaurant in Florida, and they wanted veteran resumes, right, to be restaurant managers and go through this restaurant program.
Yes.
And we started providing this restaurant on, I won't say hundreds, but, double digits of resumes, at least 30 or 40 resumes. And it was a 3-month time. Maybe 50 resumes I provided. We got only 1 or 2 people into the next round. After that, we no longer got one of our veterans hired. So, but then we know we were sending quality veterans to this program,
Mm-hmm.
right? None of the people in that chain served. They were just looking at their civilian resumes and just like, okay, well, but what the company didn't understand is you asked us for veterans that had restaurant management experience. We were giving you the very best of the best. Yes, we found them on Indeed and LinkedIn and all these other places where we scrape from and pull veterans from. So, and some of these veterans are a little upset with me because they didn't get a job, and I was like, I can only control what I can control.
Correct.
Right. Especially in hospitality management, it took a hit in the early years of the pandemic, and it really started coming back. So they wanted, they wanted a steady career. And so, but I had to end that relationship with that company. I said, I can't do 90 days and you not hire not one of my veterans. It'd have been okay if you got one or two hired. I probably would have stayed with you, but I can't do this to them or to myself. I can't promise them a job and then you're not following your end of the obligation and actually wanted to hire veterans, right? You said you wanted veterans, but you didn't want to actually hire veterans. There was no advocate inside the line. One company I did work for was Booz Allen Hamilton, very pro-military, and I was on several hiring panels, and I would ask the veteran on the other side or somebody looking for the company, like, I would coach them while we're talking because they needed when I got hired in, there was a veteran on that panel. Booz Allen's very good about putting veterans on your hiring panel. When I was on my hiring panel, I'm asking, he was a senior, he was a master gunnery sergeant, he was an operations new stuff. And, what I needed to know was like, can you work for a lieutenant? Right? Can you work for a lieutenant? Can you work for a master sergeant? Can you work for somebody that is less ranked than you? Right? Or can you work for somebody that's younger than you? Inside of say Booz Allen, right? You got a 30-year-old program manager, project manager, right? But they've been with Booz Allen for 8 years, so they're senior in rank. They, what I could get out of that vet is if he was willing to work for somebody younger than him.
So, for example, if I were to ask you, what do you look for in your candidates? You're not only looking at their experience and their technical skills, but you would be also looking for a certain degree of humility, I suppose, as well as
intelligence and humility. Now, internally for me is either King Globe Enterprise Solutions or Strategic Engagement Consulting. I'm looking for a commitment. I'm looking for, can you do the job? Do you have the competency to do the job? Are you willing to put in the work? But also, are you willing to, emotional intelligence on yourself from your seniority, right? Coming down. So, again, veterans are going to start at one level, but they're normally going to rise to the cream of the crop. Does that, that makes sense? Like,
yes,
I did a post probably a weeks ago, and I just analyzed all the veteran presidents. There have been 33 of them. 13. I don't know. There's been, I got to look at the number, but over half the U.S. presidents are veterans. So it's not impossible for veterans to achieve the highest levels. Do they need opportunity? Yes. Do they need to believe in themselves? Yes. But, it's just one job. Many jobs out there. Somebody will value, and that's what I go back to. Somebody will value. You really wanted Verizon. Okay. Well, you have to find somebody in Verizon that's going to pull you in. You want to really work for AT&T, you work for Walmart, you have to find somebody that's willing to pull you in, right? And that's what I tell veterans, especially the large firms, is reach out to that veteran service organization inside the firm, that outreach program, the ERG, the veterans executive group inside of that program, right? At a small firm, there may be one or two veterans, and they may bring that person in to have that conversation. At the large firm, they're going to have a whole veteran group, like Booz Allen Hamilton has a whole veterans, line of a group that meets, right? So Walmart, Target, you name the large firm, they have a veterans organization with inside that firm.
Yes. Yeah.
You find that firm. But, also for veterans, networking starts 14, 2 years out, right? And those 2 years out, what are you doing in those 2 years? Well, you're doing informal interviews. Do you want to be a lawyer? You need to talk to some lawyers. Do you want to be a pharmaceutical person? You need to talk to a pharmaceutical person. Do you want to be a data tech analyst? You need to start talking to them. And a lot of us are confused because we don't want to know what we want to do next. And a lot of us are confused because we still want to think we want to give back. Well, I tell those vets to say they're confused or they want to give back. I go into the VA. The VA hires a lot of vets, even, big VA and little VA hire a lot of vets. Again, I mentioned the 22% veterans. A lot of state and local hire veterans because they just know their discipline and they're used to, following procedures, right? So, but veterans will be like, well, I spent so much time at the federal level. You did, but did you know the team that you were applying to, right? Because they can pull you out of the hat. Right, especially if you know that hiring manager and you guys have had a conversation, they can pull you out of the hat in USA Jobs and get you in. Like a lot of it comes down to networking. It's not networking just to get a job. It's networking to build relationships. Do I have veterans and just public sector folks reach out and say, find me a job? First questions I'm going to ask them are, what do you do? And beyond just their resume, because for a resume is tailored to that job, right?
Yes.
Project manager at a banking company. Well, USAA wants to see financial project management, right? You go to a large construction or infrastructure company. Well, they're going to want to see project management in infrastructure, right? You go to a large, let's say Yellow's not together anymore, but you go to US Express and you're doing program analytics or project management for US Express, that trucking company. They're want to probably see project management in logistics. So people focus so much on their resumes when it's really the handshakes. What do you have available for me that I can fit, right? Example, you go to a job fair. Hi, your 30-second elevator pitch goes something like this. Hi, I'm John King. I have a background in logistics, data analytics, and financial management. I've seen some things on your website. Tell me where I'm a likely fit at. Now you've built in, and that recruiter can go, hey, you know what? I have this program, or hey, you know what? Not walk up to a recruiter and say, what jobs do you have? Well, they're just going to go, I got all kind of jobs. What do? You go in and you provide value right away. Hi, my name is, I have this going on. I've got these degrees. I'm really interested in this program that you have, right? You got to be kind of targeted when you go to a job fair, right? So, there's a whole, I guess I could do a whole class and lesson on just the transition alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How soon out would you advise candidates to start this process?
One, you got to determine where you want to be, right? During the pandemic, we allowed you to work remotely. And I say we because I'm an employer myself, but we allowed you to work remotely. That's going away. That's collapsing. And that started with the federal government in 2022 when they were like, hey, everybody's coming back to DC. We don't care where you are, coming back to DC. And so, if you understand how the money goes, is those $1 billion agencies that support the federal government, they're going to do what the federal government says, and they're going to start collapsing too. Booz Allen come back, Raytheon come back, Amazon come back, Microsoft. They all said start coming back into the office, right? So it was a way to weed out those who didn't want to come in and not come in. Now, if you really want a job, you say, yeah, I'm coming in. Then you have FaceTime with that hiring manager. You have FaceTime with the folks, and they can remember you during promotions and, awards, right? You know what I mean? And cut and layoffs. Hey, John was in here every day. No, he's not. You know what I mean? I never saw Judy. And nothing against those folks because they may have sick children, taking care of parents. Just that environment doesn't allow you to be remote. I know what your question was. You need to know where you want to be, right? Don't chase the job, chase the location. You want to live in Texas, then you need to start networking with folks in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to live in Colorado, the same. You want to move to Guam, the Philippines, Germany, you start networking with those people there. And your network doesn't just have to be LinkedIn and Facebook. It could be, your mom's best friend's friend, right? I tell people, go to the VFW because you don't know how many retired business owners are at the VFW. Yeah, they served in Guam, they served in Korea, or they served in Gulf War, started a business. Maybe they did window washing for many years and they sold their business. They're still probably connected to the business community. Hey, I'm looking. The VFW is a great hidden resource that people don't think about, or American Legion, retire military in there that were business folks or senior executives at certain companies. You know what I mean? So, one, you got to know where you need to go, right? Choose a couple industries. Well, I don't care. Government, IT, defense. Choose a couple industries. And then you start networking inside of those industries. You start figuring out the local hiring events. Maybe you go TAD, or you take some leave and you go there, pass out a cards, go to Stables. Right now in my hometown, it's like $22 to get next day cards. You just go to Canva or you go to PowerPoint, create your little card name, and maybe on the back you just type about things that you're interested in, and you hand it to somebody, and you follow up with them, and you follow up with them until you build the relationship. Now they know you, and when you say, hey, can you refer me to X job, there's a better chance of you getting employed than a stranger off the street, if that makes sense to you.
It does. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things we do differently on this podcast, I may say, as opposed to others that I've seen out there, is that we engage in discussions with individuals who have proved normal right. People, you and I, who have, we don't have necessarily celebrity status,
right?
But we have proven that we have accomplished something in life,
right?
And we deal with the how. All too often, you and I will see, whether it be on YouTube, podcasts, whatever, that someone very well known will be interviewed.
Yeah.
And essentially, they'll talk about success.
Yeah.
Now, I believe that millions of Americans actually do want to become successful. They just don't know how. So these individuals very cleverly know that and approach the subject very ambiguously. They'll talk about things such as positive thinking. They'll talk about the value of persistence, the value of working hard, long hours, but they never specifically talk about how to do it, or at least how they did it. I've seen you on LinkedIn for quite a while, and I've spoken to some friends in common, and your longevity, your success, both in what you're doing, as well as your prior military career, speak for themselves.
Right.
The thing speaks for itself. So yourself, John King, when you first started this journey in military, but especially post-military, when you first started, did you, for example, put together a business plan? Do you believe in business plans? How did you get that ball rolling?
So for the transition, I'm a terminal captain, right? I got non-selected for major in 2015, and they kept me on active duty for the last 5 years. For every year after 2015, I was non-selected for promotion, right? I had a couple of friends who did get beyond. They were passed over from captain to major, and they won, and they got in, right? But for 5 years, I used to get the phone call every year from my generals. Hey, you were non-selected. Yes, I know, sir. Right? It hurt a little bit. It hurt a little bit because I knew I was as good as my peers, or equivalent to my peers, or maybe even better than some, but it hurt. But, I realized in 2017, 2018, let me go back. In 2015, that was that first promotion got passed over, right? In 2016, I started looking for an MBA program. The Marine Corps has a great follow-up program. Once you do command and staff and EWS, you can trade those into about, don't quote me, back in 2017, it was like 6 colleges. right? That you could get an MBA or an advanced degree, not just an MBA, but you could get an advanced degree. I went through New England College. I took my 4 years equivalency of EWS and command and staff, traded that in. They gave me a year's worth of MBA leadership. I got an MBA from New England College in leadership, right? Emphasis on leadership, right? Strategic leadership specifically is what I'm looking at my degree now. I don't think it says Master's in Business Administration, Strategic Leadership, right? So I got a piece of paper that made me, that showed leadership to the civilian world. That was the first step of starting my transition. I'm a terminal captain at 20. In 2020, I will be out. Yes, I have to put my Appendix J in 14 months out, but you know what I'm saying? It's like I have a date. Colin Powell, don't remember which book, but the late great Colin Powell said most people don't know when they've reached their train station, right? There's a train station is pretty long. I think it's his most recent book, not when he was the Secretary of State book. So he was like, most people don't know when they reach their train station. I knew I was going from Brooklyn to Queens. Like my stop was Queens. Like I started in Brooklyn, getting off at Queens. I'm not going through all the other boroughs. I'm getting off at Queens. That is my final destination, or Long Island. From Brooklyn to Long Island, I know I'm getting off on Long Island. Right? Most people try to hang on to go to Buffalo or go all the way down to Washington D.C. or drive down to Raleigh and be like, "Oh wait, I was supposed to get off many stops ago." Right. So part of that is the old Marine Corps leadership thing, know yourself and seek self-improvement. That's probably the one that stuck with me the most, know yourself and seek self-improvement. So as I transitioned out, I needed to get civilian equivalency paperwork to show that I could be a leader in the civilian world. And how did that come about? From talking to peers at the Pentagon that already retired or already advanced retired, like they've retired from the military. They've been with the GS service for a while, and they're like, hey, this is how you need to get ahead. And I was prepared.
Very smart thing to do. Very smart thing to do.
I was prepared to be a GS contracting employee. I'm still a contractor with the Marine Corps because, it takes time to grow businesses, but everything I did between 2015 until I retired prepared me to be in that 22% of government employees, either as a federal contractor or working as a GS employee, right? So, you got to back it up, right? Like you got to look. As a logistician, I cared about the start, and then I already planned what happens at the end, right? We always were planning. Right. We need to plan you to get to the field. And then if there's a 2-week exercise let's just say the exercise started on the 1st and it was going to end on the 15th. By the 14th, I knew what plan I needed to have to start bringing everything down and getting the trucks loaded and all that. So we planned, right? Logistics out of the Marine Corps, some of the best program managers, project managers.
I'm a logging too, so you have a witness.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. I'm nothing against our infantry brothers, nothing against artillery, nothing against pilots, nothing against maintenance folks. But logisticians have to plan. You have to. You have to.
And it's 24/7, baby.
24/7. And so my transition, I tried to fight the system, meaning I went to Amazon, Walmart. I didn't have the data analytics to do those jobs, those entry level jobs that they wanted me to do. Right. Where I started getting traction is when I had a resume writer. She rewrote my resume, and it was consulting. Interviews started flying off the shelf at that point.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
I wish I would have had this conversation with you years ago.
Yeah. The interviews started flying off the shelf. I was all in other industries where it just didn't fit. But for the federal government, being a logistician with a secret clearance, it fit. Right. It not necessarily federal, but federal contractors, it fit. Right. It was a fit. So, that's definitely, I don't care if you're doing 4 or if you're doing 34, you got to start planning your exit. You have to have an exit strategy.
You see, the The business plan worked for me in terms of getting me mentally aligned, but it never really turned into a roadmap because things constantly seem to change. And every bank that I've ever gone to seeking a loan, I'm primarily in real estate, never asked me for a business plan. I suppose if I presented myself with less confidence, they probably would have, just to get rid of me. But it was a good guide, but I found it to not really be necessary, though. And you mentioned something else, too. After multiple deployments as a loggy, I thought I really had what it took to work for any company. I thought I could do anything, right? But then I learned to my chagrin that that wasn't the case. Years ago, the U.S. military, in terms of supply chain and logistics, was probably the envy of the world. But now times have changed. Civilian logistics are much more advanced now, where it's as if the military is dealing with a single-shot rifle, single-shot shotgun, and in civilian logistics they have all Amazon with the dark warehousing, with just on time logistics, not just on time. What's that? Last mile logistics far ahead of us. And so I thought I saw that either I'd have to start at a level much lower than I really wanted to, or maybe do something else. Very, very true. From what you're saying, rings very, very true from my experience.
Right. The U.S. needs to understand that they're a competitor now. Competitor, not just to world leaders like China and other countries. They also need to understand they have competitors within inside their own wall and within inside their own borders. The Amazons, the Walmarts, the you name the other large logistics companies or large transportation type companies. They also have competitors within inside, right? Small businesses are like, it's easier for me to go to Amazon or to Walmart or to JB Hunt or to somebody else than try to go get a contract to the DLA, right? And so
correct.
The government needs to understand you are a competitor now. Yes, you still spend $700 billion whatever you still spend $2.2 trillion in business, but how much is that going to small business? I think they said 25%, but like a small business can go to IBM and do a small consulting thing, right? Right. Or a small business can go to CVS pharmacy and do a small thing and win a 1 year, 2 year contract and get their feet in the door. So the U.S. has to understand is, this isn't 50 years ago. This isn't the 70s. This isn't the 80s. This isn't the 90s. It is 2024 to 2020s, the last 15 years. You are your competitors are Apple, Amazon, Walmart, the large trillion-dollar, billion, hundreds of billions of dollar firms, because these small businesses doesn't have to go to you. So everyone is competing for the same things logistically, right?
Right.
That is one thing that I went to a defense meeting at Fort Liberty. It used to be called Fort Bragg. I was at a defense meeting over the summertime. You had Senator Tom Tillis there. You had Senator Ted Budd from North Carolina. You had the 18th Airborne Commander there. And you had some other defense leadership. And I said, all right, you guys talk a big game, but you're so caught up in all of your policies and all of your red tape that we can't get things to you fast enough. You want us to be better than adversaries of the United States? We can't, because your R&D and your acceptance rate is slow. Guess what these civilian tech and logistics companies are doing? They're going to adversaries and they're going to internal competitors. They don't want to do business with you. Yeah. They don't want to do business with you. And then I had a bunch of these commanders come up to me and like, well, what can you do different? Give me the authority and I'll bring you business, because I speak like you. I talk like you, but I also am a civilian now. And so I talk like them a little bit, right? So that can be a whole nother path in logistics. And I went to several different logistics things, of course, of the year. And we were way ahead. The civilian logistics is so far way ahead than regular military government logistics, just miles.
You ain't kidding. I remember watching a video from Defense Acquisition University, right? And this is after I had encounters with civilian logisticians and their organizations where they were talking about dynamic routing, they were talking about digital twins, and so on this video from Defense Acquisition University, I see it must have been like an old retired colonel coming out wearing a blue polyester suit and talking about what a miracle it was to send a hamburger to a soldier in Desert Storm. And I thought to myself, do you really think that people nowadays in supply chain management and logistics think that way?
No, it's like Tom Tillis, for example. If you go look up Senator Tillis's information, he told us in a room last year, because quick backstory, he created this North Carolina Military Business Development Center when he was the House. He was a Speaker of the House when he was in North Carolina. And then, so he's been following it for, it was a baby. It was his baby. It was his conception, and he comes down and supports it. Before he signed the National Defense Act, or, ushered in the National Defense Act, he told us in this room, he goes, this is before Israel and Hamas. He goes, look at what's going on in Ukraine over the last almost 2 years. Look what's happened in Ukraine. If the Ukrainians are figuring out, and I know the U.S. is supporting them, but if you can understand what's going on in Ukraine before Hamas, you're going to lead the future. That man sits on like 7 committees: Armed Forces Committee, Small Business Committee, VA Committee, just 7 committees. You know what that means? That means majority of the purse strings go through his desk, right? When a person like that tells you in front of an audience of like 200 plus contractors and duty, this is what you need to do to be successful.
Exactly. Joker. Yeah.
I listen intently. Yeah. He was on 7. I got a picture with him, so just so I could have a picture and like use it on my website. Like, hey, look, Senator Tillis, right? But he when he said that resonated with me. I was like, oh. And contested logistics is the thing that DOD and the government wants to figure out. Mostly DOD first. As you know, the government will use the DOD as the experimental thing before the rest of the government does, especially in things of operations, logistics, cybersecurity, Space Force, those things, right? The VA does its own thing, but as far as like that goes, but you know what I mean, is like, the military figures out a supply chain logistics thing, then the rest will follow suit, right? And he said that to the defense contractors. I was like, oh, contested logistics was something that was mentioned in the National Defense Act. He mentioned cybersecurity, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning. He mentioned all those things. You go after that in some capacity, either as a subcontractor or partnerships, you're probably going to get further ahead than somebody just trying to sell hammers to the government.
Right. Yeah. For any enterprising individual, whether we're speaking of business or non-business business organizations in particular, startup costs and financing are always a big deal. Yeah. Now, I noticed that you had the foresight, indeed the wisdom, to create the headhunting firm and the consulting firm, which actually employ the same skill sets. Right. The same skill sets. So did you find that substantially reduced any startup costs, any funding, any financing you may have needed?
I've been bootstrapping the whole time, right? I took we refinanced our home after we moved here in 2011 and got a refinance in 2022. So I used some of that. I used some savings, and I'm still catching up, right? But I think if I'd have probably learned about more of the SBA financing initially before really starting, I would have probably used that. But now, after going on come April, March timeframe, it's going to be 2 years of running both businesses. I understand where I use my funds from, right? Like, just it took a little bit of time. My client, I'll take back everything mean I've ever said about them, but they finally got me paid. But he was keeping me informed of what was going on. He was another veteran. He had a federal contract on Camp Lejeune. I got him a role there. We finally got paid, but because of the bills I have and because of the things I'm paying for in the state of Missouri and R&D, well, most of that check went away, right? But it's a good stopgap. I purposely am now going after a additional headhunting thing. So, I'm aggressive with my headhunting. I'm hiring a consultant to help me find clients, right? Or more clients. I've been doing more partnerships with the federal government. We haven't won yet. We're waiting on them to award us. And of course, the Missouri thing, we're doing the nonprofit. Missouri, Kansas thing, we're doing the nonprofit approach to get that into the state. Yes, financing initially is a thing, but it's going to take. You are developing a product and you're developing a thing. It's going to take you time to even get that financing because you have to prove to a bank or you have to prove to some financial institution that you can bring in the money and you can pay back the loan, right? I attempted to do this through federal contracting, but I had no contracts on hand. If I'd had a contract on hand, then it's a different story. They'll allow me, I can use my contract as collateral. That's why I'm waiting on the federal government right now, the Department of VA, for financial implementation and dashboard data analytics contract that we're working on. It's a very significant contract for a new business, a startup business, right? And then I can then borrow upon that contract, pay down those bills, and then continue to push forward. But I'm not, I'm not folding up because it got hard. Right. I'm not folding up because it got hard, and I'm not folding up because I put myself in financial detriment. There are things I can afford. The things that I did, I can afford to lose because I can always fall back on my retirement, disability, and my government contracting job that not just keep the lights on, but not sustain my family, but put us in a different place. So, as a veteran-owned retired business, two different types, right? Veteran-owned business with no supplement, or veteran-owned retired with disability, we can take a little more risk. This individual cannot take as much risk. So they definitely have to plan what they're doing. And if they want to fast forward 5 years, you're probably going to run into problems, right? Financially, family-wise, mental health, all of that, because you're trying to, again, like you said, and if you look at my post today, I've been on this kick of the internet is not a real place. The internet is not a real place. The internet is not real. The internet is not, for all your audience, the internet is not a real place. Your favorite influencer, your favorite social media person, or whatever, aren't real people. Yes, they're flesh and blood real people, but they're not real people in the sense of, like you talked about, those corporate CEOs talking about all of these things. They're not actually giving you the full details. If any of your audience goes out to my LinkedIn page, John C. King, and follows me over basically the course of 2023, I'm giving you not necessarily a roadmap, but I'm giving you the behind the scenes of what it's like to be a small business person, be in federal contracting, and now be a nonprofit co-leader for an initiative, right? So, and the reason why I do that is when that time comes, let's say it's the VA contract that I win, or I win a hefty staffing contract. There's no surprise. You've seen the journey. You've followed the journey. You've been involved with the journey. There's no surprise. I'm not going to buy the fancy cars or the fancy house and all of that, but you'll know, like, oh, he worked his tail off to get here. Yes, but I showed up every day, right? Like, even if it sucks, I show up every day. And that's the difference between successful business owners, successful people in life, and not. I know mental health's a thing, and that's what I'm working through in the state of Missouri. But if you show up every day when we have our program in place, we're going to get you healthy.
Yeah, what you said just right now reminds me of something I heard. There's a YouTube channel called Vibo, VYBO, that I religiously follow. It's geared toward entrepreneurism, success, and the like. And one of the gentlemen made a comment that he said. It was basically in regard to the stereotypes that some people have about the rich not paying their quote unquote fair share. And he mentioned that especially in the tech industry, that the individual may have tried for a decade and at the end of 10 years, he hits it and he hits it really big. But the detractors don't take that into account, that he spent 9 years basically in the red until he finally made it. So to say that basically the individual hasn't been paying his fair share is not really a just statement either, because they're not taking into account all the risk that the individual took, you know?
Right. What I don't understand is the vilification of those who are wealthy. I don't understand that. I'm still trying to understand that because being a CEO, small business owner, paying my taxes, doing all that almost the last 2 years, we grind, right? We grind. I don't understand the media's vilification or social media's vilification of those who made it, who became successful. I know it's jealousy, but like, why is it a vilification? Like, people hate on Tom Brady. Okay, as the man, that's a different story. But Tom Brady as a quarterback, as a leader, like, it doesn't really get any better. You know what I mean? I wasn't a Tom Brady fan until really he went down to Tampa Bay, and he led it to a Super Bowl without the same support that he had up in New England. That tells me that's him, all him. So I'm still trying to figure out the vilification of those who have succeeded, who've stayed in and done the thing that they've done. If you look at Tiger Woods, I was at a leadership conference 20 plus years ago in Kansas City, Missouri, when I was on active duty. And they mentioned Tiger Woods and they mentioned Kobe Bryant. Like, how many of you want to shoot 1,000 basketballs a day? How many how many of you want to go to the golf course and play 72 holes or whatever they said, something crazy amount of holes, right? Like a full day of holes, like start at 8 and then end at 5. And Tiger Woods playing 72 or 102, whatever. He played 3 or 4 rounds of golf in one day, hits over 1,000 balls. Now, how many of you want to do that, right? And that's the difference between those who are going to be successful and those who are not, because what you talked about of those sharks, those people who feed on those to get you that quick money. Money's not quick. I went through that in 2022. I tried to go on the crypto route. I tried to go to the digital affiliate marketing route. I went to all these routes, and back to my statement, the internet's not real. I'm sure the internet, the internet people that will cancel me for saying that, but the internet is not a real place, because they're, like you said, they're not giving you the full backstory on how to be successful, right? Right. You're going to have highs. You're going to have lows. You may have many, many lows before you get to that nice high level. If you're always chasing what the Joneses, the Johnsons, the Smiths, the Williams are doing, then you're never going to be satisfied in your own.
I'm not anti-tech. I do believe in tech, but I do believe there's an element of tulip mania regarding the internet. If you recall the tulip mania, when there was a time in history where was it, in Denmark or Netherlands? I think it was Netherlands, Holland.
Don't quote me on the time, but it was, early 17, 15, 1600s.
Something like that,
huge thing. And then eventually all those tulips are worth nothing.
Right. Yeah. Did you, in your success journey, your success trajectory, did you find that in the profession that you chose, both the consulting as well as the headhunting, that there were certain legal or regulatory costs that either you knew of or you didn't know about, that others might not be aware of, such as bonding, licensing, things of that nature? Yeah.
The access to the federal government is pretty inexpensive, right? You need an active domain website. You need a working website. You can get one through GoDaddy. You need a active domain/website. You can go to any of the GoDaddies, the Wixes, whatever, to create your website. You need a banking account. and you need a registered LLC. And,
Mm-hmm.
combined, that's less than $1,000, right? You can go
Mm-hmm.
high end and get a nice website and domain and pay a
Mm-hmm.
little more, but, entry to access to the federal government is going to be, less than $1,000 or even less, between $500 and $1,000, because you got to pay your state registration fees and all of that. And so it's about $1,000. That doesn't guarantee you a win at all. It's just the ease of access into
Right.
the government is cheaper than most starting small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now that doesn't include you traveling to maybe DC or to some other industry day events, and then meeting folks and doing those things. So those are additional costs. Those are hidden costs that you're not aware of. Recruiting, there are costs. You pay for a LinkedIn membership. You pay for an Indeed membership. You pay for your website. You pay for there is a cost to ease of access. There are recruiting folks out there on the internet who will say, "Well, I started up at less than $1,000 a month or whatever it is a month." That's fine, but there are costs to be a recruiter. There are some free things and there are some low cost things, but you will pay because you need access to folks.
Mm-hmm.
And the data is normally behind a firewall. LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, Manitow, Signal Hire, it's all behind a firewall, right? I just can't find you on the internet without going to a firewall and pulling your information down, contacting you, right? You need a cell phone, you need access to the internet, right? Those are those hidden costs that people don't think of, especially being a recruiter. In the federal market, again, it's a low cost, but then the additional hidden fees are travel. Maybe you're not the best proposal writer, so you hire someone for proposal writing. Maybe you're not the best business development person, so you contract to business development. And you may be in the hole a lot before you would get that first win, right? So business cost, even if you want to be one of those affiliate marketers, there's still a startup fee. They still charge you $200 to $2,000. You want to run an Amazon or a Shopify store, you're going to pay for that, right? You want to, when you went and got your insurance license, you paid for that, right?
Yes, definitely.
You want to be a CDL driver, got to go to school, you're paying for that. You got to get a truck, paying for that, paying for the bondage, right? So I'm against, and I will continue being against, of those who don't tell the full story. They just want hard-earned people to earn their money. I was having a conversation with a good friend, and I was like, I don't have a love of money like a lot of my peers in the business world do. I have a love of people and a love of supporting people. And I was like, how, as a Christian, do I balance trying to be a business person and then the love of people? Right. That was my talk to him, because he's like, there's stuff I had to pay for in Missouri, and we were just having a conversation, and he's like, yeah, the people don't care that what you had to go through to get that. All they care about is you needed to get them their money, which I did. But you know what I'm saying? Like, people don't care what it took me to get to that level.
In the military, the team is everything.
Yeah.
Right, the team is everything. And so I'm sure that when you started on your success journey, it wasn't all alone. You built a dream team. How did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, mostly the folks that I bring around me, I had a team in 2022 that I brought around me, all veteran or military affiliated folks, and with the King Global Enterprise Solutions. I was a little too aggressive with that, right? I mean, they were all volunteer 1099. I lost them all because, eventually you're only going to volunteer so long before you're like, hey, boss, I got to peace out, right? The strategic engagement consulting built friends and, vets around me, and we're still all volunteer, but, we've been making progress, but, knocking the door at the government. My new King Global Enterprise Solutions team that came kind of on board toward the middle of 2023, still 1099, but they're excited because I learned my mistakes in 2022, and I'm applying them forward in 2024, 2023, 2024 on how to be more successful in recruiting, headhunting, federal contracting. You really just have to keep knocking at the door, right? Not everyone wants to go through. There are many days in federal contracting, like, why am I here? And then the team that we've built together around me will go, I just found this out. Let's do this. And it gets you excited because they're excited, right? So you need ironing, sharpening iron in this process, right? The solo entrepreneurs that claim to be solo and tell you they're solo, you need to pull their financial statements. How many virtual assistants do they have? How many others do they have? How many production teams do they have? How many of these things do they have? So the only face you see on YouTube is one, but there's an entire team behind them, right?
Yeah.
Like they stop selling people that falsity that you can get out of the mud by yourself. That's not a thing.
It's simply not true.
Not true at all, right? Yeah. Kurt Franklin's story, right? I don't know if you saw it on YouTube or not, but like,
I know who he is, but I haven't seen his story.
It's a story of finding his dad. It's on YouTube. It's probably, I think it's maybe 2 series. It's on YouTube. Basically, bottom line, he had a network around him, but he didn't know his father was that close in his life growing up because his mom kept it from him. But Kurt Franklin always had a network around him, right? So it's just, there's just this falsity out there that I am one trying to go against because it misleads people. I was misled. Like, again, I was misled in crypto, and I went down this affiliate marketing kind of real estate. You've heard of property seizure, you know, all that abandoned property that the states and banks take over.
Oh, tax liens and tax deeds?
Yeah, I got into one of those programs, and the program is probably good, but I wasn't in the right mentality to execute it. Right? 2022, I was looking for quick money, and that's not a quick money thing. Even though they had all these testimonials, these people in 30 days were getting money. Who knows if that was true or not? Now, I signed up for the program, and I didn't know it was basically free, right? I signed up for the program, but it's a free program. You just go to the Department of whatever the state, you probably know the department, but you go there, Department of Revenue, you ask them for information. Hey, I want to be a property finder. I want to, get this property back to folks. And like the state of North Carolina, for me to be a property finder, you had to have a private investigator license, yada, yada. It was an official thing, right? In the state of Missouri, I tried, and the state of Missouri says, no, you need to actually have a business here. You can't be out of state doing property finding. Then we can give you property access. So yes, I got duped because I thought this was like, oh my God. But when you start going out to these property finding websites, the national website, and then breaking it down, you're like, oh, this is all on the government. Why? But again, people fall for those things because they think it's free, but it's a government backed thing. I needed to not pay any money, but I paid, and I'm still paying for it because I got duped. So I'm the anti-duper. How about that?
Yeah, but the tax liens and the tax deeds are actually valuable skill sets. But not everyone knows, like you said, that they can get it for free. Imagine life in the following metaphor. You and I are or even better, you and your lovely wife are walking down the road of life. Right. And you want to achieve success. And there are people on both sides of the road yelling at you. You have Tony Robbins screaming, saying, John, give me $15,000 and I'll make you and your wife happy. And then you have someone on the other side saying, John, give me $5,000 and I'll teach you how to become independently wealthy through Forex. And then you'll have someone else on the other side saying something similar about insurance. Cacophony of voices. You don't know which one to listen to. But there's no real way to know this. But what they don't tell you is that you could pretty much have access to everything they're telling you at any public library, right? But we learn, and then hopefully we teach our children such that they don't necessarily have to go through all of this. The issue with the tax lien and tax deeds, because myself and my wife, we invest in real estate, is that it's not that difficult. Well, I shouldn't say it's not that difficult because it's state dependent. But state dependent. One can buy a house or a piece of vacant land. But number one, you have to go and actually see the damn thing, because it might be the equivalent of one of those spaghetti strips between freeways. You know, it could be in a flood zone. It could be in a, what do they call it when the land is sinking? Sinkholes. It could be in a sinkhole. And I've been with my wife to auctions, the last one being in, I think it was Hampton Roads, Virginia, although we live in Florida, where we went and visited various properties, and then we established amongst ourselves how much our ceiling. Right? And then we saw people bidding far beyond that ceiling. And my wife and I looked at each other saying, did these people not go and visit this property? I mean, because if they're bidding something close to or above market price, who's going to buy this thing? You know? Right. So part of it is ignorance, and the other part of it is not knowing that now you own the property, someone has to willingly buy it from you. There's no guarantee on that, and you may end up waiting 10 years before someone wants to buy the property from you. So yeah, there's that element of it as well too. Yeah.
Yeah, scams. People have been scamming since there was the snake oil, whenever that was. But there's always been a scammy portion of capitalism business, right? And sometimes you have to be burned really bad to understand.
Right. Circling back to something you were mentioning earlier about the actual recruiting process. And I'm only bringing this up kind of out of context because as I get older, sometimes I forget where I park my car. You know, if I don't mention it now, I probably will forget it. You know, I have to, in the parking lots, I have to take pictures of the level and the row I'm in. Is there anything that you bring to the attention of candidates that they should know that are not in the actual job description? I can read a job description, but for example, is it important to know about the company culture? That might not be in the job description, you know?
Right. So, example, a job staffing for a contractor for the embassy in Germany, right? It's in Garmisch, Germany. I gave them 3 qualified candidates. They took the first one. They really liked him. And I had 2. Now, one of them I worked with, and I said, hey, you have a lot of good IT background. I really like that, but I really want you to focus on some of the supply chain logistics things. So they're asking, I know you know how to write. Just make sure you put your writing competency down and you put those things. So I am a candidate first recruiter. I'm not a client first recruiter. I don't care if that hurts me or not. I'm a candidate first recruiter. And I don't want to use this thing, but it's the only way I can describe it. The people that I source for or send to clients, it is my product. It represents these people represent my firm in all intents and purposes, right? And inside of my contracts, I put down, I'm going to give you the best candidate possible. You know, there's this language in there saying I'm going to do my due diligence as a recruiting firm to give you the best candidate. And I, definitely within your portion of the contract, I expect the same level of integrity and business acumen inside of doing that. So, probably not every recruiter does this. I'm going to work with you. Right. You're a vet. I'm going to work with you. If it's a hard unicorn job that it's hard for me to find, I'm going to work with you. Why? Because I want to see you succeed. I want to get you hired. And eventually, of course, I want to get paid. So I'm going to put my efforts into getting folks in. I'm different. Not everyone wants to do that. They just treat them as inventory.
Inventory. That's a good word. Yeah.
When I was at Headquarters Marine Corps on active duty, from 2014 to 2017, the manpower, we were going through a lot of restructuring drills across the Marine Corps. Now I work for INL. And manpower, I work for installation and logistics, Deputy Commandant of Installation Logistics down in Quantico. We did the liaison through combat development and integration. We were doing some manpower restructuring, adding new programs into the Marine Corps. And the civilian, he was a civilian, but I think he was a retired Marine also, used to say inventory. And I would always be like, Marines aren't inventory. Anytime I got kicked out of meetings because I put too much people emphasis on it, but I was like, Marines are not inventory. I would just go back to when John King was a sergeant and like where I'd have to go and what I'd have to do. I always went back to John King being the sergeant, right? Right. Not when I was a captain, senior captain. I always went back. What would John King, how would this impact Sergeant King? That's how I always, that's how I always went back to my younger self. What would this guy tell Sergeant King on why we have to move or what's going on that impacts Sergeant King's family? So I always put myself back in their shoes. So I don't like the word to use inventory product. It's not on the assembly line at Amazon making a widget, right? You're talking about people's lives, right? You're talking about people. That's why I am people first, whatever you want to call it, people first.
It's a form of respect.
Right. So when I'm talking to clients and we're having these conversations, I'm going to ask what they're doing, how they're doing. You know, I want to build these relationships because I know they have a bottom line they need to push. But like at the end of the day, I'm going to do my job and give you the best qualified candidate I can find at that time, right? You know, because not everyone's available, right? Sometimes you have to pluck people from their current job and get them into another job. But, you know, I'm going to give that client my undivided attention for those candidates that they're asking for, if that makes sense. So I'm always going to work with candidates, right? If you're one of my candidates and I'm putting you in for a job, with artificial intelligence, your resume is something that gets into the door, and I know I'm required to give you a resume, but if we have a lengthy conversation, I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know who you are. That way I can put in a little bow on your resume instead of just handing your resume, because you can now with AI, you can take somebody's resume, somebody's JD, compare it, tell me what the differences are, and I can just send that to a candidate. I do that all the time. Hey, you're missing the following things. Please add these back in there. Right? That you can do that. That, you know, with the emergence of artificial intelligence is when the laptop first came home, the PC, you know, Apple first came home, right? If you have access to it, everyone can do similar things. So I'm not saying a resume is obsolete. Sure, I need your background, but I don't even read resumes anymore. I just look to make sure you meet the minimum qualifications. You have X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. All right. What does the client want to see your resume look like? All right. Change it. And then I'm going to send you forward, right? Like, because it's down to the point of, do you trust that the person is going to do the job or not? That's really what it comes down to. Do you, as the client, trust that this individual can do the job? That's it, right? As running two businesses and having volunteers and 1099s come and go, I don't take it personal, right? Because everyone has their own where they're at in life, right? So some people can't stay, some people want to stay, some people don't understand what it takes to grow a company and they have to leave. I got it. You got bills to pay, you got kids, you got life. You know, I completely understand. There's no harm or no foul to me because you were volunteering and you were getting paid. Now, once I start having like full-time W-2s, yeah, I'll probably put some standards together. Like, if you miss this many meetings without a phone call, if you don't do this, yeah, I'm gonna probably get rid of you. And then it's not like a personal thing. It's business. You're making me now look bad, and the reputation suffers if you can't get your stuff together.
Yeah. Well, John, if any of our listeners, candidates, individuals, companies looking for some consultation services would like to reach out and contact you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Best way is just connect with me on LinkedIn. I mean, you can also connect with me on Facebook. I use LinkedIn, John C. King on LinkedIn, and then JC King on Facebook. My emails, you can just use a KGS email. It's jking at king. And so jking at kgestac2.com is one way to get hold of me for recruiting, for the federal contracting, for those looking to get into contested logistics or inside the VA, because I am service disabled, veteran owned small business owner. You can get a hold of me also through jking at sectacgovcon.com. LinkedIn, Facebook also. And then if you're looking to donate or you want to participate with the Wellness to Warrior Suicide Awareness Program in the states of Missouri and Kansas, I do have a website that I can provide to you. But you can also reach out to me through LinkedIn and Facebook and email.
John, it's been wonderful meeting you, wonderful talking with you. I don't know if anyone has ever told you, but you have a great energy, a great aura, a great ashe. And I hope that if you're ever down in the Orlando area, you give me a call, give me a buzz.
And I need to do that. There's a lot of people when I travel, I just be forgetting, right? I'll be like, I know someone here, right? And I just forget. Yeah. And then I'll be like, I was in Orlando. And somebody like you will go, why didn't you stop by? And I'll be like, because I forgot.
Yeah, and most especially if you like Brazilian food. My wife is from Brazil, and she's a fantastic cook.
Oh yeah, I've eaten the what's that slice? The
churrasco.
Yeah, the meat.
Right. They just keep bringing it. Yeah.
There's a place in Korea that we used to go to when I was on active duty, and we do these exercises outside of Osan base. And Marines would just try to go T80 with me just so they could go to this, Brazilian steakhouse. It would just, and it would just load up. It was really good. So,
well, John, I wish you well, and the very best of health and happiness. God has blessed you with a wonderful family as well, too.
Well, thank you very much, man. Yeah. Well, you take care of yourself. Stay in contact.
Ladies and gentlemen, headhunter and CEO and owner of SEC Consulting, our special guest today at All Business No Bull Podcast. I'm Don Carlos. Please join us next time. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave your comments. Thank you so very much. We'll see you next time. Thank you, John. You take care.